Good morning. Happy Wednesday to you. It is 10 o'clock. I am Tim Harris. It's time for 10 with Tim. How you doing? Good to see you. We go verse by verse every day, Monday through Friday, live on Facebook or YouTube or later, whenever you join us. Most people are not live with me. I recognize that. However, some of you are and always have been. And again, what a great morning routine we have together. I just love being in the Word with you. You make me study harder. You make me more faithful, and I'll be forever grateful for what you've done for me in providing me this opportunity to go through the Word with you, verse by verse. It's good, isn't it? It's just really, really good. Today we're doing two chapters, Numbers chapter 17 and Numbers chapter 18, and it's all about the priesthood. Actually, the last few chapters, if you notice, have been about the priesthood. And this morning in my study, the question for me was, why is being a priest such a, these people are literally going to war, with each other over who's going to be the priests. And I just think that's kind of odd. Like part of me is like, why is being a priest such a big deal? And again, I say that as a pastor. I say that as a pastor who loves ministry more than anything in the world. I'm also painfully aware of the fact that these days are fewer and fewer and fewer young people going into ministry in all denominations across the board. But in the state of Kentucky, we have so much trouble finding people who want to go into ministry. It's really pretty devastating. 10 years ago, if we had an opening on our staff and we published an opening, we would be buried in resumes. There's just so many young people, so many people who wanted to be in ministry would want to come and serve a church. But now you get such a tiny stack. There just aren't that number of people who want to do this job. And that's heartbreaking to me. Again, I think that ministry is just the most wonderful way of being in the world, and I love it. At the same time, I read this chapter. It's like, Korah. These people they started a war. They were ready to fight and die. To take over the priesthood. So, what is it about the priesthood in this context that makes it such a desirable commodity? I think first off, it's just the access to God's presence. Now, remember in this context, they think of God's presence, and it is truly God's presence is the source of life and blessings of all kinds. And so if you have access to God's presence, I guess the assumption is you have access to life and blessings beyond other people. So it's that access to the source of all good things. But also just, you can't get past the status and honor. The priest wore very special garments. Nobody else got to wear those things. They are among the people in the society very recognizable, and that brings a kind of prestige and influence. And there are always people who are drawn to that. Now, I don't know if that's still true in ministry. There was probably a day, at least in the Bible Belt, where I remember walking in. I remember going to Lowe's with Jim Gifford back in the day. He was a pastor. I was his associate pastor, his youth pastor. And we go to Lowe's or something, and Jim Gifford would say, hey, would you give me your preacher price? Like Jim always thought there was like a preacher's discount, a minister's discount. And maybe back in that day there was, or maybe at some point there was, but now I promise you there's not. Ain't nobody discounting nothing for pastors anymore. That's for sure. And so, especially back in Moses's day, I suppose there was a real prestige, a real recognizability that went with being a priest. I guess there are always people who desire that. There's the perception of power. The mediation of blessings, the fact that they get to handle the offerings, that gives a kind of influence and a perception of power that I know some people are very attracted to. One of the things I love about being a pastor, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm one of the few people with the authority invested by the state to say, I now declare that you're husband and wife. Like if I say that, you're married, and if I don't say it, you're not. Again, that's a kind of power that's pretty important. And then just the material provision. Much of chapter 18 today talks about the provision for the priests and the Levites. Remember that they don't have a portion of the land, that they don't have land of their own, which means they're not raising crops, that they don't have access to all of the things that sustain life and make a living because they're working full time for God. And so they're provided for by the offerings of the people. The people bring extra into the temple, to the storehouse, and the priests and Levites live off of that grain, that wine. I think it's interesting that they tithe the tithes. They receive from the tithes, and then they have to tithe from the tithes. I think that's kind of interesting. It makes sense. But that fact that they're provided for, by the church, so to speak, I guess that's attractive to some. It's not an extravagant life. You need to understand that they're never going to have the means to they're not going to have a house and all of that like that you see with the others, but there's security in that, and especially in these wandering days in the wilderness, nobody else has that kind of security. So at least they know where their next meal comes from, and maybe that's not always the case for other members of the house of Israel. So I guess for those reasons, to be the priest is a big deal. And so you had this entire, rebellion around Korah and Dathan and Abiram, and that's now over. But God steps in chapter 17 once and for all, visibly to confirm, Aaron's priesthood. And so the test is kind of cool. Every tribe, the tribal leader brings in a staff, a wooden staff. In other words, it's a straight, probably a stick, a branch that's been cut, dried, and it's dead. That's the important part. It's dead wood. Brings in this dead wood staff. They carve their name in it so you can tell one from the next, and they line them all up there in front of the ark, in front of the tablets of the covenant. They're in the meeting place with God. And they leave them overnight. The next morning, only one of them has budded. And it's Aaron's staff. So it's this picture of life from death, right? But Aaron's staff, again, it's all dead wood, but all of a sudden, because of the blessing of God, Aaron's staff, it buds, it blooms, and it produces fresh almonds, like an almond tree in full fruit. Overnight it just becomes this living tree, and so. That is God's way of saying, Aaron is my man, don't question it again. And that staff is going to be left there by the Ark of the Covenant. Later, it's in the Ark of the Covenant, but it becomes associated with the Ark of the Covenant. And again, it's another warning to the people, a warning that God is the one who appoints those who will serve him, and they are accountable to him. And also, they're going to be protected by him. It's a warning to the people. I just think that's a fascinating story. I've always heard of that, but I guess I never dug into the details like in chapter 17. So that was good study for me today, and I love that. I guess for me, there's also that symbolism. Again, I relate to it as a minister. I love that symbolism there of the budding, staff. It's this idea that spiritual authority is known or revealed by fruit, by the fruit it bears. Like I say, there are people drawn to ministry and positions of spiritual power for all kinds of reasons, and often just for this perceived power, the sense of prestige or whatever. But truly, Jesus says you'll know them by their fruit, and a genuine man of God, a genuine minister of God is always going to be revealed by the fruit. There's going to be something that bears from his work, from her work. And so anyway, I love that. Spiritual authority is known by its fruit. Chapter 18, again, it goes back to just sort of regulations. These are the duties and provisions for priests and Levites. Again, we're talking once more about Aaron and his tribe, the Levites. And so there's just extra instructions here given in chapter 18. First, about the priests. The priests, remember, are Aaron. They're all Levites, but all priests are Levites, but not all Levites are priests. So the priests are Aaron, who is the tribal leader of the Levites, but it's Aaron and his sons. Just Aaron and his sons are the priests. And they are the ones who bear responsibility for the sanctuary and the altar. And they're the only ones who can approach the most holy things. Now, the Levites in general, that's Aaron's fuller tribe, not necessarily his sons, but the rest of his kinfolk. They are assigned to assist the priests, but they're not allowed to touch any of the sacred furnishings. They can assist, they can be there, but they're really not allowed to handle holiness, not directly, not up close. And then about their provisions, they are provided for from the offerings, tithes, the offering portions of the sacrifices. And that is how they will survive. I also love, again, the Levites have no portion of the promise and no land of their own. But I love how God says in verse 20, I am your portion. I am your provision. I'm your inheritance. I just love that. And again, that's a pastor. God somehow, God's presence, God Himself is the reward for ministry. I know that that's true. I'm a paid minister. I guess most of you know that. I'm employed by Woodburn Baptist Church. I am their pastor, and I have been for going on 30 years. But truly, the reward of ministry is not the paycheck. I appreciate the paycheck. Don't get me wrong, but the real rewards are spiritual rewards. The real rewards are the privilege, the calling, the satisfaction of serving the Lord with my whole life. It's my vocation, my calling. It's also my occupation. It's what I get to do every day, and not everybody gets to serve the Lord every day like I do, and I don't take that privilege for granted. Again, I don't understand why more and more people these days don't desire it. But one way or the other, I know that truly the Lord is my portion. He is my inheritance. He's the reward for the work that I'm blessed to do. And it is a blessing to do ministry, and especially at Woodburn Baptist Church. Church family, I love you so much. Other pastors I know would give a kidney out of their body to sit in this chair and get to do what I do with the people that I serve every day. And I am among all men most blessed. Pick up here tomorrow at chapter 19. All right, just one chapter. Chapter 19, we'll talk about the water purification. We'll talk about the red heifer tomorrow. So 22 verses for tomorrow. Have a good Wednesday, and I will see you in the morning, Lord willing, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you all. I love you guys. Have a good day.